nyumbani, naenda kutembea, niko ndani ya ndege. Achilia katika jina la Yesu. Come on devil, come on Satan, come on devil.
Ugonjwa wa sukari ni nini? Mtu unapenda sukari sana ama unasikia nini?
Is a lifestyle.
Lifestyle?
Yeah.
You want sugar?
No, situmiagi sukari.
What is diabetes? Causes what?
Ni pancreas yako inakosa kutoa insulin. Pancreas yako inakosa kutoa insulin.
Pancreas ni nini?
Kikuyu ni rwari yogo.
Inashindwa kuchuja.
Yeah.
So you drink a lot of...
James Nganga's Range Rover that was involved in an accident yesterday at 5:30 p.m. A head-on collision where husband and wife were critically injured. The wife unfortunately passed away late in the night.
Hapo watu wa kwanza walijua ni Nganga na wote waliniambia hiyo gari ni Nganga na ni Nganga alikuwa naye. Yona amefanya accident, akatoka akafunga gari, akaingia kwa gari ingine na akaenda.
Apostle Dr. James Nganga was born on 5th September 1952 in Subukia, Nakuru County, as the fifth child in a family of 9 children. His life took a tragic turn in 1963 when his father passed away, leaving his mother to raise the 9 children on her own. This challenging upbringing led young James Nganga into legal troubles. His first encounter with the law occurred in 1972, when he was sentenced to 6 months in Nakuru prison after he was involved in a drunken altercation with his friends. During his imprisonment at Nakuru prison, he became friends with hardened criminals at the prison, who indoctrinated him into a life of crime. After Pastor Nganga had served his sentence and was released, he, along with some of the criminals he had met at the prison, began planning and executing violent crimes in various areas across the country. This life of crime saw the pastor being incarcerated numerous times over a period of 20 years. This was between 1972 and 1992. His life, however, would change in 1989 while he was serving an 8-year sentence for robbery with violence at Shimolatewa prison in Mombasa. During this time, he found salvation and his calling, which is preaching. The pastor then started ministering to his fellow inmates, and following his release in 1992, he settled in Mombasa, where he continued preaching in the streets of the coastal city and ran various legitimate businesses on the side, like pulling a cart, selling newspapers and fruits. Despite his businesses doing well, the pastor wished to preach full-time. To grow his ministry, Pastor Nganga relocated in 2001 to Ngara in Nairobi County. When he got to Nairobi, he continued preaching in the streets and began appearing on KBC television. By 2004, he was determined to establish his own church, and he allegedly secured a 42 million Kenyan shillings loan, which he used to purchase land from the Central Bank of Kenya, and he built the renowned Neno Evangelism Center Church. The church grew rapidly, and Pastor Nganga gained prominence and considerable wealth as a televangelist. He also became known for his unconventional preaching, healing, and exorcism practices on Kenyan TV and radio. In spite of his success, Pastor Nganga's life in the limelight has been marred by controversies, the most notable one being his alleged involvement in a hit-and-run accident that led to the death of Mercy Njeri, also known as Woki or Mama Maureen, on Sunday, 26th July 2015 at Manguo area in Limuru, along the Naivasha-Nairobi highway. Welcome to Silent Shadows. As always, if you appreciate our true crime storytelling, support our fortnightly series by liking and subscribing. Together we uncover compelling tales of crimes and mysteries in Kenya and beyond, presenting well-balanced narratives that respect the victims and their loved ones. On Thursday, 23rd July 2015, 3 days before the tragic accident that claimed Mercy's life, Pastor Nganga traveled to Naivasha for a long weekend in preparation for the grand opening of his new hotel, the Newstead Hotel, formerly known as the Sunny Hill Hotel, an 8 million Kenyan shillings project reportedly funded by his congregation at the Neno Evangelism Center Church. The hotel's opening ceremony took place 2 days later, on Saturday, 25th July 2015, and was attended by church members and prominent figures, including the pastor's friends. After the event, Pastor Nganga spent another night at the hotel, and he spent the better part of the following day, Sunday, 26th July 2015, ensuring that everything was running smoothly at the establishment. Meanwhile, 98 kilometers away in Umoja, Nairobi County, Mercy Njeri was enjoying a lazy afternoon with her husband, Martin Mbogwa. Mercy suggested to her husband that they drive to his parents' home in Murengeti village, Limuru, for dinner. This was something the couple did often, and they anticipated it would be a routine trip to Limuru and back. Unfortunately, this time, their journey would end in tragedy. The couple left Umoja with Mercy behind the wheel and Martin beside her. When they reached Uthiru, Martin called his father to let him know they were on their way. His father told him they were not home, and he encouraged the lovebirds to still go to their house in Murengeti area and wait for them. But Martin and Mercy decided to take a detour and visit his sister's home, also in Limuru, hoping his parents would join them there. Sadly, tragedy would strike a few minutes later when Mercy and Martin arrived in Manguo area of Limuru shortly before 5:30 p.m. Martin, who was introspectively gazing out of the window enjoying the scenery, says he noticed a red car out of the corner of his eye, which he identified as a Range Rover. This was the last thing he saw before the Range Rover collided head-on with their small car, a Nissan March. After the collision, Martin briefly regained consciousness, and he heard Mercy faintly calling his name, and he also remembers calling her name 3 times before blacking out again. Following the accident, a crowd quickly gathered at the scene, and Good Samaritans helped rush Mercy and Martin to Tigoni District Hospital, where Martin was admitted with various serious injuries, and Mercy passed on when she was being transferred to Kenyatta National Hospital for specialized treatment. Luckily, one of the people at the scene knew Martin's family, and they called his father, Peter Ndongo, who was in Kikuyu town, to let him know about the accident. When Peter got to where the accident had happened, he found his son's car, which was badly damaged, and the red Range Rover, which had caused the accident. He also noticed the Range Rover was empty, with the driver and its other occupants nowhere in sight. As expected, he had so many questions as to why this was the case, and witnesses at the scene provided him with 4 crucial pieces of information. Firstly, that 2 Range Rovers, a red and black one, had been recklessly speeding, overtaking other cars dangerously, and driving on the wrong side of the road when the red Range Rover caused the accident. Secondly, a man who appeared to be part of Pastor Nganga's security detail was in the back passenger seat of the red Range Rover, using a walkie-talkie to signal other cars on the road to get out of the way and make way for the pastor's car. Thirdly, and most damningly, they alleged that Pastor Nganga was driving the car. And lastly, after the accident, the pastor allegedly exited the car, locked it, and left the scene in the black Range Rover, which allegedly belonged to Bishop David Muriithi of the House of Grace Church, located in Langata. Disappointedly, the police whom Mercy and Martin's family depended on to bring the culprit to justice began mishandling the case from the onset. This was evident when the traffic police based at Tigoni Police Station delayed so much getting to the scene. As a result, any evidence at the accident scene was compromised by the large crowd that had gathered. When the traffic police eventually arrived, led by Patrick Kahindi Baya, the Tigoni base commander, the mishandling of the case continued. For example, they broke protocol and towed away the Range Rover without inspecting it at the scene for crucial pieces of evidence, including the identity of the driver. Adding to the complications, Sergeant Christopher Nzioka of the Kenya National Police Air Wing Unit went to Tigoni Police Station that night with the keys to the Range Rover, and he claimed he was one of the passengers in the car at the time of the accident. It's worth noting that The reason that Sergeant Christopher Nzioka was in Pastor Nganga's car was because he was one of his bodyguards during his stay in Naivasha. In fact, it would later emerge that the pastor had a very close relationship with the police, and it was common for him to have senior police officers as part of his security detail. Therefore, it is not surprising that the police may have been reluctant to thoroughly investigate the case, possibly because they did not want to bite the hand that feeds them. At Tigoni police station, Sergeant Christopher also told his fellow officers that he knew the driver of the Range Rover, one Mr. Simon Maina Kuria, and he would bring him to the police station the following day. Keeping his promise, Sergeant Christopher presented Simon at the Tigoni police station the following morning. This is Monday, 27th July 2015. At the station, Simon's appearance in front of the police was treated with a peculiar casualness to the extent that his report was not recorded in the OB, and his statement, which was recorded by the said police, was shallow and had a lot of gaps. For instance, Simon claimed that the car belonged to a car dealer called Mr. Mundia, who was the owner of Valley Road Motors. Simon further claimed he was test driving the car on the highway when the accident occurred. The key questions remained: if Simon was test driving the car, why was Sergeant Christopher Nzioka of the Kenya Air Wing unit with him during a mere test drive? Also, where was he test driving to and from? And how was he able to run from the scene? And where had he even received treatment following the accident? The police not only failed to ask these questions, but they also failed to call the Valley Road Motors car dealership to ascertain Simon's claim that he was test driving one of their cars. But as you shall see, this car dealership might have been allegedly in bed with the police in the plot to help Pastor Nganga get away with murder. Later that day, at around 4 p.m., Constable Koech, who was overseeing the case at Tigoni police station, accompanied the Range Rover to Nairobi for inspection. Suspiciously, the inspection of the vehicle was done outside of the traffic police working hours, was completed in record-breaking time of just a few minutes, and released from police custody, all of which deviated from the usual inspection procedures. It was also during this time that the Range Rover was in Nairobi for inspection that its insurance stickers and number plates were changed. You see, at the time of the accident, the Red Range Rover had an insurance policy issued by Monarch Insurance Company that had expired on Thursday, 16th July 2015, 10 days before the accident. To conceal the fact that the car's insurance had expired at the time of the accident, Sergeant Christopher and another officer allegedly went to Valley Road Motors, where they collected a new insurance sticker issued by CIC General Insurance, which was set to expire the following year, and was registered to another vehicle with car dealer number plates. They then affixed the new insurance stickers and dealership number plates to the Range Rover. Funny enough, this is not Sergeant Christopher's first rodeo when it comes to breaking the law. We found reports stating that in September of 2009, he was arrested after he was found with 500,000 Kenyan shillings, which was linked to 33 million Kenyan shillings that went missing from a G4S security van. How he was able to get out of this pickle and still be in the police force is baffling. The cover-up for Pastor Nganga's involvement in the accident continued when Constable Koech got back to Tigoni police station at around 6:30 p.m. and recorded in a report that he had escorted the Range Rover to Nairobi for inspection, and it was found to have no defects. What stood out in this report was the fact that he recorded the car's number plates as the new car dealer's number plates, starting with KG, and not its original number plate, which started with KCD. Eventually, this falsified report was forwarded to the Inspector General of Police at the time, Joseph Boynet. Luckily, by this time, the public had gotten wind of the accident and Pastor Nganga's alleged involvement. As expected, Kenyans were livid, and there was a lot of uproar on both mainstream and social media. to the extent that some people who had witnessed the accident came out on social media detailing what they had seen. For example, one of the witnesses, called Nasirian, posted on the Road Watch page on Facebook saying, "Today I am a disturbed member. Yesterday afternoon, as I was returning from Nakuru, I noticed 2 Range Rovers racing, and I thought it was a bit childish and lack of respect for the machines. The drivers were reckless and they kept shouting and shoving other motorists off the road. We attempted to tell the police just before the Kinungi market and they just ignored. The Black Range Sports caused 2 motorists to collide right at the market and they sped off. The second Range Rover zoomed past us almost immediately after. Approaching Limuru, there was some serious traffic, and on reaching the accident scene, it was that range that had crashed into a saloon car and threw it off the road. The fool was speeding and overtaking when he got the oncoming car head-on." Additionally, one of the leading newspapers in the country uncovered that the pastor had allegedly received treatment at Karen Hospital on the night of Sunday, 26th July 2015, and had insisted on being treated as an outpatient, which could be assumed was an attempt to cover his tracks. On Tuesday, 28th July 2015, in an unforeseen move, the Inspector General of Police at the time, Joseph Boynet, took to Twitter to dismiss the public allegations of Pastor Nganga's involvement in the accident. Evidently, Boynet's tweets were influenced by his junior's false report. Some of the things he stated were, it was Simon who was driving the Range Rover and not Pastor Nganga. The Range Rover was on General Dealer's KG license with valid insurance and was on a test drive when the accident occurred. The alleged driver, Simon Courier, who was charged with dangerous driving, was then presented at the court in Limuru the following day, on Wednesday, 29th July 2015, where the judge ruled he was to be released on a 100,000 Kenyan shillings bond. While the police worked to undermine justice, Mercy's family mourned the devastating loss of their loved one. Mercy Njeri was laid to rest on her father-in-law's farm in Morengeti, Limuru, on Tuesday, 4th August 2015. Born on 11th September 1972 in Murang'a, Mercy was the only daughter of Lucy Wamaitha and the late James Muirore Kariuki. She was remembered as a loving daughter, mother and wife, known for her jovial nature, ambition, and kind heart. The following day, on Wednesday, 5th August 2015, just a day after Mercy's burial, former Traffic Police Commandant Charlton Moreithi announced that he was taking over the investigation. This was as a result of the public uproar and the evident poor handling of the case by the police. The Traffic Police Commandant's primary goal was to uncover any police cover-ups and to establish Pastor Nganga's presence at the accident scene. Moreithi first interrogated both the traffic police officers involved in the case and Pastor Nganga. His investigation uncovered that 6 police officers were involved in the cover-up. These were the 2 senior officers who would later face charges in court, namely Patrick Bayer and Christopher Nzioka. Additionally, Constable Wesley Koech, who falsified the vehicle inspection report and allegedly negotiated with his colleagues on behalf of Pastor Nganga, along with Patrick Bayer's juniors. These included Corporal Eunice Sila and Constables Alexander Gitonga and Tabitha Anayo. The 3 were to face disciplinary action for their negligence in the investigation. For the pastor, he was questioned for 5 hours at the traffic headquarters in Ruaraka. During the interrogation, he claimed that he was home nearly 2 hours before the accident supposedly happened. While the details of the interrogation were not made public, Pastor Nganga shared his side of the story days later during an interview on Citizen TV on Monday, 10th August 2015. In the 27-minute interview, Pastor Nganga stated that he was indeed in Naivasha for his hotel opening, but left in the afternoon on Sunday, 26th July 2015. He further claimed he was driving a car that was not a red Range Rover, and that he first learned about the accident from his home in Nairobi around 7:30 p.m. when a friend called him telling him about it. He added that he was concerned that some of the guests who had been at the hotel with him might have been involved in the accident. So he began to inquire about who was in the red Range Rover. He then discovered the car had been at his hotel and was driven by Simon Kuria, who he claimed was a member of his church, but the pastor further alleged he did not know Simon well. The pastor also denied receiving treatment at Karen Hospital on the night of the accident and claimed he did not see the car at the event. However, a photo from the event showed the red Range Rover parked among other 3 cars in the hotel's parking lot, making it difficult to miss. Pastor Nganga also denied ownership of the car, despite a viewer watching the interview messaging Citizen TV saying he had seen the pastor with the red Range Rover at Galleria Mall. In response, the pastor went as far as to challenge people to verify the vehicle's registration details online to prove he was not the owner. As expected, the details about the car's registration came to light, and they revealed that it was originally owned by a man named Njunge and was registered with the number plates starting with KBS. The car was then involved in a shooting incident in 2013, and Njunge sold it in November of the same year to Harrison Ngunyi, who then sold it to Mr. Francis Mondia of Valley Road Motors. The vehicle's registration was later changed to KCD, but the ownership transfer beyond the Valley Road Motors car dealership remains a mystery, as it appears to have been done without the knowledge of KRA and NTSA. It is questionable that Valley Road Motors has appeared multiple times in this case, from Simon Kuria claiming he was test driving their car, to issues with fake plates and insurance stickers, and now dubious car transfer of ownership. As such, the dealership's connection to Pastor Nganga should have been investigated more thoroughly. The former traffic police commandant and his team continued with the investigations, and they were working on piecing together the pastor's movements. Consequently, they went to his hotel, but were denied access without a search order. After obtaining the search order, they returned to the hotel in Naivasha, only to discover that the CCTV cameras had been removed. The removal had been carried out by the security guards under instructions from the hotel's CEO and director, Pastor James Nganga. In the investigations, they also questioned Simon Kuria about where he had received treatment for the neck injuries he alleged to have sustained from the accident, and it was very telling when he was unable to provide any medical records confirming his treatment. After Muriithi and his team concluded the investigations, Pastor Nganga was arrested outside Serena Hotel at around 12:30 p.m. on Wednesday, 19th August 2015. This arrest came just hours after the pastor, through his lawyer Cliff Ombeta, had filed a case in the High Court to block his arrest on the basis that the Inspector General of Police at the time, Joseph Boynet, had changed his original statement, shifting the blame from Simon Kuria, the purported driver of the Range Rover at the time of the accident, to Pastor Nganga. The pastor contended that this shift was as a result of public and media pressure. Following his arrest, the pastor was detained at Bigiri police station while awaiting his court date. The arrests extended to Simon Kuria as well as the 2 senior police officers Patrick Bayer and Christopher Nzioka linked to the accident's cover. The following day, that is Thursday, 20th August 2015, all 4 suspects were presented in court. Pastor Nganga faced 4 charges: causing death by dangerous driving, failing to report an accident, giving false information to a public officer, and conspiracy to defeat justice. The 2 senior police officers were charged with covering up evidence that implicated Pastor Nganga and neglecting their official duties, along with additional charges of giving false information. while Simon Kuria faced charges of conspiring against justice. Although the arrests initially seemed like a step toward justice, the case took a disappointing turn on Friday, 21st August 2015, when Senior Resident Magistrate Timothy Oletanchu ruled to release Pastor Nganga, Simon Kuria, Patrick Bayer, and Christopher Nzioka on bail. The judge reasoned that the prosecution had failed to present compelling evidence to justify their continued detention. The judge also noted that, although Pastor Nganga was a well-known public figure, there was no proof he would interfere with witnesses or any ongoing investigations. Despite the judge's ruling, Pastor Nganga's close aides allegedly attempted to offer money to Mercy's family to settle the case out of court, but her family refused, denouncing the offer as blood money. The case suffered another blow 5 days later when the same judge denied the prosecutor's request for Pastor Nganga to submit DNA samples, which could have strengthened the prosecution's case. The trial began later in November of 2015, with the prosecution lining up 30 witnesses, some of whom had witnessed the accident. Among the witnesses that testified were a truck driver who alleged that the red Range Rover, which was heading towards Nairobi, had overtaken him at high speed around the Kenungi area on the Nairobi-Naivasha highway. The truck driver also noticed a man sitting in the back of the Range Rover who had the window rolled down, and he was aggressively waving a police radio at other drivers on the road. He continued to testify that a few minutes later, he arrived at the accident scene, where he identified Pastor Nganga as the driver of the said Range Rover. Another witness who arrived at the scene 5 minutes after the accident also alleged to have seen Pastor Nganga getting out of the wrecked Range Rover. This witness also noted that the crowd was condemning the pastor for causing the accident. Additionally, another witness testified that he had seen the accident occur while walking home and saw Pastor Nganga at the scene. In spite of these testimonies placing the man of the cloth at the scene, the prosecution needed tangible evidence to be able to prove without a shadow of a doubt that the pastor was indeed on the scene of the accident and had caused it. Since the prosecution's request for DNA samples had been denied, they turned to Pastor Nganga's phone records, particularly the GPS data, to strengthen their case. Regrettably, it was alleged that detectives from the DCI offices, home to the Cybercrime Forensic Unit, tampered with the pastor's phone data in an effort to conceal crucial evidence. Specifically, his mobile phone logs, including GPS data that could have confirmed his location, were erased. The prosecutor was not the only one facing frustration. Mercy's family was also frustrated. They claimed that Pastor Nganga frequently failed to appear in court, and when he did, he seemed to receive preferential treatment from the police. Furthermore, Mercy's family suspected that Chief Magistrate Godfrey Odur, who was presiding over the trial, and the pastor might have been in cahoots. They cited instances where the two would conveniently arrive at the court at the same time, which raised concerns about the judge's integrity. Mercy's family also felt sidelined in terms of communication. For example, the case ruling was postponed 6 times, and when they went to court on 19th April 2018, expecting a ruling, they learned that the case had been postponed again to 4th May 2018. On the day of the ruling, Friday, 4th May 2018, Senior Principal Magistrate Karen Jalule read Chief Magistrate Godfrey Odwall's ruling since he had been transferred to Nakuru. The ruling acquitted the 4 accused, Pastor James Maina Nganga, Simon Maina Kuria, Patrick Kahindi Bayer, and Christopher Nzioka of all charges. The judge cited inconsistencies in the prosecution's witnesses as the reason for the acquittal, stating that the prosecution failed to conclusively place Nganga at the scene of the accident and prove he was driving the car. The judge further claimed there were discrepancies in the witnesses' statements, highlighting that while the witnesses had not recorded in their statements that they saw Pastor Nganga at the scene of the accident, they testified in court about seeing him at the accident scene. The ruling came as a shock to many, and there was a public outcry and protests demanding justice for Mercy Njeri. The Interior Security Cabinet Secretary at the time, Fred Matiang'i, was also shocked by the ruling and tasked the DCI to investigate the case afresh. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions also submitted a petition appealing the judge's ruling to acquit the four of all charges, and the acquittal was overturned by the Kiambu High Court on Tuesday, 10th July 2018, and the judge ordered for the case to be heard afresh starting 1st August 2018. But Pastor Nganga, being Pastor Nganga, moved to court challenging the appeal, arguing it was submitted outside the required 14-day window, which delayed the fresh probe into the accident. This petition that was filed by the pastor was later dismissed in August of 2020, but there haven't been updates on Mercy Njeri's case since. Beyond the hit-and-run case, Pastor Nganga has continued to face legal troubles. For example, he was involved in another accident on Friday, 27th November 2019, when he crashed his brand new Lexus into a lorry along Nganga Road. Trouble followed him into 2020, when he was sued by Linus Kaikai for threatening him, and in 2021, he faced allegations of a 3.6 million Kenyan shillings fraud related to a rent deal, which he ultimately settled out of court. Most recently, in 2024, he is entangled in a legal dispute with the government over the land on which his church, Neno Evangelism Center, is situated. Honestly, the pastor's pattern of being in and out of courts has remained consistent throughout his life. The only difference is he now has the money to keep him out of jail. Kenya's judiciary is tasked with being an independent institution of excellence in delivering justice to all. Unfortunately, this mission remains elusive, as the scales of justice are often tipped in favor of the wealthy. This is evident in numerous cases where the rich and the famous seem to evade accountability for serious crimes, including murder. For instance, on 11th January 2017, Peter Kenneth's son, Andrew Kenneth, was allegedly driving recklessly when he hit and killed Kennedy CJ in Waroko, Kangemi. Despite the gravity of the incident, the case, like many similar ones, did not go anywhere. Likewise, in 2018, Kenyan musician and politician, popularly known as Jaguar, faced charges at the Kirinyaga Law Court for reckless driving and allegedly causing an accident with his Range Rover along the Sagana-Makutano highway. This accident resulted in the unfortunate demise of a boda rider called Peter Mogo and his passenger, Sinfolian Maingi. The police in Mwea were even implicated in attempting to cover up the accident, and as anticipated, the case against Jaguar never progressed. We are indeed still far from achieving a truly free and fair judicial system. We send plenty of love and light to Mercy's family and friends as we remember her today. Thank you for joining us today. If you appreciated this video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to be notified when the next video is up. Until then, please take care, stay safe, and always trust your gut.